Welcome to Retina, where Retina conversations happen. I'm Scott Krzywonos.
And I'm John Kitchens.
John, last episode we spoke about your interview with Eric Bessie down at the Cencora Vision Exchange. Cencora is a sponsor of Retina. They were one of our first sponsors. We really appreciate them. And John, you got a chance to speak with Shane Dixon, who's the VP of Vision Strategic Advancement and Business Development at Cencora Specialty GPO. Can you tell us a little bit about Shane?
Yeah, so Shane's been a long-time friend. I've known Shane for over a decade. Shane's got a really interesting past. He's been involved with basically all facets of the retina world. He's a PA by training, and he worked for a pain clinic, taking care of patients and seeing patients, so he understands that side of things. He then matriculated on to Regeneron, where he helped launch Eylea. And that's where I first got to know Shane. And so Shane was very influential in the launch of Eylea. Getting adoption for Eylea, was kind of a national figure there. So he's got a great presence within Retina. Then he took over our practice, actually, and ran our practice for a good 5 years. Helped get us in a position where we could sell to private equity, so he knows what that process is about. Then once we sold the private equity, Shane kind of took a lead role within the private equity company, particularly around drug utilization and drug delivery on our side of things. And then he was hired away by, at the time, AmerisourceBergen, and Cencora became Cencora. And Shane now has really become kind of their lead of GPOs at Cencora. And the originator and the kind of mind behind this vision meeting that they had. So Shane's worn a lot of hats. He knows a lot about Retina, and I think talking to him gave a lot of great insights into what Bessie has to offer.
Yeah, Shane has his own vocabulary, as does Cencora, right? Like a GPO. We'll put a pin in that because you get to that with Shane in your conversation. There's an alphabet soup of acronyms. You also you mentioned the meeting itself, right? We should talk about what happened here. Again, I was really impressed. The first speaker of the day was a home run. It was David Sr. He's the SVP of Biopharma Intelligence, not a role I even knew existed at Cencora. And he covered quite a lot about government policy and its intersection with retina practice, specifically with drug pricing. So he talked to us a lot about the Inflation Reduction Act and the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and how they affect the economics of running a practice. What did you take away from his presentation? Because it was 40 minutes and it could have been 5 hours.
I mean, so first of all, he's one of the world's experts on this subject. And so I can tell you that I've been to a lot of these types of talks where it's kind of predictive of what the future is going to look like. And my head was spinning. I mean, the whole concept of how we get paid for drugs, how we make money off of drugs and things such as that, it looks like it's all going to fundamentally change, and it's going to change significantly from most favored nation pricing to the One Big Beautiful Bill to changes in the way that they price the drugs and we are reimbursed for the drugs to biosimilars. I mean, he just covered the gamut in his 40 minutes. And I'll tell you, this is going to be an ever-evolving territory over the next 2 to 3 years. I really hope we can have David Sr. on as a guest because I think he will blow a lot of retina specialists and administrators' minds with the things that are going to be coming and what we need to be prepared for.
I think he was really good at cleanly articulating the relationship that Washington institutions have with manufacturers, with pricing, with practices, right? He talked about how the White House, this current White House, has entered into agreements with some of the biggest pharma companies in exchange for tariff relief to get lower drug pricing. It's not an evaluation of the policy itself, but that's just not something that I'm reading in lay media necessarily anywhere. So it was fascinating to hear it from somebody who closely tracks this stuff.
Yeah,
We also,
he was great.
yeah, we also heard from Elizabeth Cyphers, who is a third party vis-a-vis Cencora, but seems to be their billing and coding expert there. This presentation was great. I think you could easily say, oh, I think I'm going to skip the coding and billing section. And it ended up being, I think, one of the best talks. What were some of your takeaways from that one?
Boy, continued emphasis around the 25 modifier. I mean, it's kind of the biggest thing in retina. 25 modifier, for those of you that don't know, it's what you use when you do an examination and a procedure like an intravitreal injection or laser on the same day. Because we do so many intravitreal injections, that modifier is used very frequently when we do examinations alongside those injections, and it draws a lot of scrutiny from CMS and a lot of audits actually. And so she really went over when and how to use the 25 modifier, how to use it properly, how people are using it the wrong way. Thought it was really a little bit scary, Scott. You were in there when she talked about how they've established now at CMS a war room to try and go after recovery of funds that have been paid that shouldn't have been paid. And they're using AI to actually vet these claims. And so I worry that we're entering a whole new world when it comes to those sorts of things.
Yeah, it was interesting because the War Room, and this was organized by Dr. Oz and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, that they're using AI not just to chase payments that maybe should not have been made, but they're using AI in a prevent and detect strategy, which is, they're calling it a prevent and detect strategy. And they're using AI to detect atypical coding or repetitive patterns that might indicate sloppy documentation or unusual billing combinations. And, Elizabeth was really emphasizing that documentation is key here, right? That as this becomes more digital and review of this becomes more digital, you're going to have to really customize your documentation to a given patient to avoid this type of detection.
Yeah, it's not just copy and paste anymore. You're going to actually have to think about it and have good rationale for why you're doing things and do it the right way.
I
This
mean,
whole concept of, oh, I just didn't know is not going to cut it anymore.
yeah, even with modifier 25, she was saying there's now an emphasis on the word and. We all became grammarians for a day, where a new diagnosis and treatment has to be used in order to use modifier 25. But defining, this sounds so silly, defining what and means and defining what treatment means and what the implications and the incentives that follow are, it was so hard to track. And even she was willing to say, I don't really know, right? Like there are some instances where it's not clear to me what a certain MAC is going to say about whether or not modifier 25 is useful. She also talked a little bit about how new reimbursement changes could inadvertently decrease access to surgical care, right? She spoke about how surgical reimbursement is going down. And I think the next step from that is that there are some practices that might not increase surgical volume or might reduce surgical volume for purely economic reasons. And it got me thinking to a talk that John Pollock had at ASRS a few years ago, where he was talking about this very thing, right? That the shift of surgical care could move over to academic centers, and that there are real economic practice implications for all of that.
Yeah, it looks like we're taking about an 11% cut across the board on our surgical fees,
That's a lot.
which is a lot. And our cataract colleagues, I think, are taking about a 13% cut.
Yeah,
So we're
geez.
not alone. And cataracts are not well reimbursed when you think about, what it is that you're doing and the cost to go in and remove a cataract, put a lens inside the eye. So yeah, it's a continued downward spiral when it comes to reimbursement for our procedures.
There was a big panel of practice administrators that happened right after the lunch session. They covered a lot of ground. What did you think was the most important topic they'd covered?
Well, it kept coming up over and over, and it's probably the biggest thing in retina in the last year is Good Days. The patient assistance fund that helps patients with copays, with some of their branded drugs, and it's been tremendously impactful across the retina space. It's forced us to switch patients back to Avastin, away from some of the more branded products.
Just to be clear, John, the defunding of Good Days has forced you to switch back to
The
Avastin.
defunding of Good Days, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Patients can't afford to pay $500-$600 sometimes for their meds, and for bilateral injections, it can sometimes be $800 to $900 for these patients. So a lot of discussion about that. The resounding thing we kept hearing from these administrators, and some great administrators, Texas Retina's administrators, Southeast Retina's administrator, they continued to say, "Don't expect it to come back." That we think this is the new norm and we should be used to this and we have to move forward from here. So a little bit disheartening because as a retina specialist, you always hearken back to the good days,
Mhm.
frankly, of good days when we actually had it easy. And I don't know if we're going to get back there anytime soon.
We're going to do a full episode at some point in 2026, doing a full autopsy of Good Days, explaining what it was, its origins, how it worked, and then how it stopped working. But yeah, that seemed to be one of the specters kind of floating through the meeting the entire time, right? Was people talking about good days and what it meant for practice. You mentioned it in your talk, John. You were given the mic for like 45 minutes to give a big update. It was a great talk. Uh, what were you trying to accomplish with that talk? Because this is not the typical audience you're talking to. You're not necessarily talking to your colleagues.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for that. No, this talk was basically more directed towards administrators and the office people, but I also wanted to make it entertaining enough that a retina specialist could be in there, listen to it, or that somebody like you who's got great knowledge about the retina space could actually listen to it and garner things. So what we really covered during my talk was all things retina, like what are we currently doing? We talked about the state of steroids, anti-VEGF therapy, with the newer next generation therapies that we're using. What are we doing with some of our previous therapies? Are they still being utilized? What about biosimilars? What's the role for biosimilars? Some of the new technologies. We even delved a little bit into surgical technologies with Alcon launching their new system, the Unity VCS system. We talked about home OCT. We talked about AI in Retina. So we kind of touched on just about everything. And my favorite part actually was talking about future therapies. So we talked about tyrosine kinase inhibitors, gene therapies, a little bit of GA talk as well. So we just sort of in 45 minutes went through everything that we're doing right now in Retina and everything that we potentially could do over the next couple years and should look forward to.
Well, that was a quick recap of a very dense meeting. John, let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, your interview with Shane Dixon, who's the VP of Vision, Strategic Advancement, and Business Development at Cencora Specialty GPO. Hey there, listeners. If you are subscribed to the show, thank you. If you're not subscribed, do so on your podcast platform. Alternatively, you can sign up for our newsletter where we will let you know when we have a new episode dropping. I promise we will not spam you. We are only telling you when we have a new episode. You can do that by visiting our website, retinup.com, retinup.com.
All right. Welcome to Retina. And today I have a very special guest and good friend, Shane Dixon. Shane is the VP Vision, Strategic Advancement, and Business Development at Cencora Specialty GPO. Shane, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, John. Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
So, Shane, both you and Eric Bessie have the title of VP. Who's boss?
Well, I hate to admit this, but he is a higher-ranking guy than I am. We're actually on different sides of the business. So Eric's on the distribution side. He's the VP GM on the basic medical side. And I'm the VP of Vision on the GPO side. But yes, he does outrank me. And I'm sure he told you that in a previous discussion.
So we've got the big title.
That's right.
What are your responsibilities within Cencora?
So my primary function is to help run our GPO sales team that we interact with our customers on a daily and regular basis. I have a director and also strategic account members as well as regional account managers on our team. I also work hand in hand with our corporate account team, interfacing with our pharma partners around contracts for our members as well.
So you work on both sides. You're working with the
Yes, sir.
doctors, the retina
Yes, sir.
specialists, and you're working with the pharmaceutical side, and the whole time trying to make sure both get paid.
Yes, which is, as you know, and I had the privilege, for the people that don't know, I had the privilege of working with Dr. Kitchens at his practice at Retina Associates of Kentucky as the COO and CEO. So I know well, it's sometimes a delicate balance to make sure the doctors are happy being paid. And at the same time, the biggest thing is to get the appropriate medicines for the physicians to use for their patients.
You know, I think the concept is that we're responsible for us getting paid for the drugs. But can you explain kind of the role that Cencora plays in our reimbursement around these really expensive biologics?
You know, it's a great question. So pharma primarily supports the reimbursement piece with the reimbursement managers, their payer team that also operates directly and interfaces directly with the insurance companies. Our job is to make sure really twofold. Number one, from a distribution perspective, from Eric's side of the business, is to make sure that you guys get drug in a timely fashion, the drug that you guys want to treat your patients. And then the GPO's job is to ensure that you have good contracts to allow for the best financial way forward on the products that you do want to use from a clinical perspective.
And it's not always that easy as just packaging some drugs and FedExing them down to us. You have to do cold chain management. Can you explain to us a little bit about what cold chain processing and management is?
No, that's a great question. So again, more on the distribution side of the business. That's something where there are certain drugs, as you know, have to be stored and they have to be shipped at certain temperatures And if they are not, it can potentially denature the protein or cause a problem with the drug. So we have to have specific measures and very stringent measures around how we actually shift that drug when it eventually gets to your practice to use for your patient.
So Shane, you mentioned GPO, and I know that just rolled out so easy, but it stands for Group Purchasing Organization. What is a GPO?
That's a great question. So it's basically where we have our membership. We have our GPO members. We leverage the buying power of our membership for them to be able to have contracts around pricing, off invoice discounts, rebates on drug. That's the primary thing the GPO does in this space.
So what really differentiates your GPO from another GPO out there?
That's a great question. So we roughly have 65 to 70% of the retina market. And I think that size allows us to be innovative with the contracts and the way that we work with our customers and pharma. It's the triad, right? So it's pharma, it's the customers, and us. So I do think it allows us to do segmentation with our contracts. The other thing that we've been able to do, for example, is we were the first GPO to have contracts on all the products in the space, including the steroids. So when I got to Cencora almost 3 years ago, there were really no contracts around steroids, for example. So we've been able to broaden that out to be able to provide contract value for the practices with all the products in the space.
Now, you mentioned something in there that I picked up on, segmentation. What is segmentation?
So it's a great question. So what we also focus on is we've got everybody from a one doctor private practice all the way up to large aggregators or MSOs, right? So that could be PE backed. So our segmentation, we have LPP Plus and LPP programs, and those are two different segmentation or parts of our GPO that we work with certain members to gain differential contract value on certain products. So again, like size, like-minded groups working together and using that aggregate for better contract
So you're
value.
grouping individuals
Yes.
or smaller groups together. And you said LPP. What's that?
So large practice program, and then there's the large practice program plus. Now the LPP plus is just private practices. The LPP has private practices and aggregators working together. So it just depends on, and there's a different price point as far as WAC spend. So our LPP plus program, you at least have to have $35 million in wholesale acquisition cost spend in a year to be part of that program. LPP is $10 million.
Okay. And what is an aggregator?
So it's great.
I'm asking you all these. I
You
don't know.
are. No, you are. It's a great question. So when I say aggregator in general, that can mean several things. You can have someone come together in an MSO type format, and either it can be PE backed or it cannot. So when I say aggregator, it's someone else who's outside of a private practice where they've been put together in a managed services organization type setting where it's either private equity backed or it's not.
You know, you spent some time with PE. You mentioned that you worked with us and really got us to the next level on things, especially around drug. But after we were acquired by PE, you worked for PE. How did that give you a better perspective for your job?
That's a great question. I really learned a lot. I worked a little over a year with Eye Care Partners after Retina Associates of Kentucky sold to Eye Care Partners. And it was a really good experience for me because I got to learn some of the synergies and how private equity can actually work and make things better for the medical practices that are part of that MSO. ECP has more of a shared services type approach, which can be different. You know, there's different ways that even aggregators in retina, some are all retina, some are multi-specialty, some have more shared services than others. But I learned a lot, and I think it's helped me be able to help our customers from a contract perspective when we're working with pharma about what they want and what they need, understanding how private equity works as well.
And you also spent some time with Regeneron before you worked with us. Explain your role with Regeneron and how does that help you better work with?
Yeah, I was very, very blessed to have the ability to launch Eylea back in 2011. And when I started as a regional director, I actually lived in Las Vegas. That's another story for another podcast, but launched it out west. Had a couple different roles at Regeneron. I also ran our strategic accounts team for a while. And it was, I think that experience, along with what you just said, the PE experience and having my practice experience, even as a PA, all that together, I think it has allowed me to have a little bit more of a lens for the customer and how that would look from all those different kind of standpoints, and also working with pharma because I've been on that side of it. I know what they want to accomplish. So that also helps me work and kind of bridge the gap between our customers and pharmas.
Yeah, you kind of know the insights of both.
Yes, sir.
And that gives an advantage for you and for us, I feel like. Certainly did for us.
Thank you.
So Shane, we're here in Dallas. We're at the, what is it, the fourth annual?
So this is the third.
Third annual vision meeting.
Yes, sir.
Seems like it's been longer than
Yes,
that.
sir.
It's a fantastic meeting. Explain the origins of this meeting and what this meeting's all about.
So when I came to Cencora, it's really funny how this came about. So previous to me coming here, we had done some roundtables and some smaller meetings, but nothing on a grander scale like we do the meeting over the last 3 years. So I got here in January. It's a really funny story. I got here in January of 23. And when I got here, we literally started planning this retina meeting, which was great. So they had already said, well, we had already started to look at some things, wanting to go down this road. And I said, hey, let's go ahead and make it happen. So literally almost 6 months later in June, we had our first retina meeting. And what we wanted to accomplish was the following. And again, when I say this, I came from pharma. With pharma talks, pharma sponsor talks, as you know, they're very narrow in scope of what they can talk about. It's on label. What we wanted to do is not only give that, which is very important, obviously, but we also wanted to be able to sponsor in a way where our speakers, physicians, administrators, or whatever we're talking about from a clinical or a practice perspective, could be a little bit more free flowing on discussion and really talk about real issues that are affecting our practices. So the way we set the meeting up was to have our pharmaceutical partners and other non-pharmaceutical partners also sponsor our meeting. And then we can then work with our speakers like yourself and with the administrators to bring content to the meeting that we thought would be beneficial day to day for the retina practice.
I love speaking at this meeting. I'm speaking at it again this
You
year.
are.
Thank you for inviting me, because it is the one where you just say, just talk about retina.
Yep.
And free reign to talk about anything in any context. And it's becoming more and more rare to have those opportunities. Who's invited to this meeting?
Great question. So this meeting is for anybody in our membership, whether it's an administrator, whether you're at a director level, let's say you're an operations person in a practice, whether you're a CFO, a revenue cycle manager, whether you're a physician, whether you're a CEO, CFO, COO, anybody that's part of a retina or multi-specialty practice in our membership can get benefit from a meeting like this with the topics that we cover, everything from clinical all the way through practice management.
And on the industry side?
Industry side. So it's great. We have a great group of sponsors. Industry has been great to work with us to sponsor a meeting all 3 years. We have sponsorships from all the companies that do VEGFs, GA, the steroid companies. We also have non-pharma sponsors as well. Some of our solutions and services partners that also support us. We've got several new solutions we'll be talking about here at the meeting. Companies that we have partnerships now, like with Payer Health, with DHR Pro, with Lumata. That's just to name a few, but we have a number of other partnerships. So it's really great because we get the pharmaceutical kind of sponsorship and support, but we also get the non-pharmaceutical sponsorship and support as well.
It seems like you really get the bigger picture. You're trying to make the practices run better, function better, and that not just about getting us the drugs, certainly making sure we get paid for the drugs, but all of the other things that
Yes.
go into this.
Yes, sir. And it's really interesting. So people say, well, what do you do as a GPO? Is it just contracts? And this is another question I get asked all the time. We're doing quarterly business reviews with our groups to make sure that their participation and the things that they're trying to accomplish from a drug perspective. We look at the previous quarter, their current quarter. We talk about strategy going forward. We also do contract pull-through discussions at the end of every quarter with all of our groups to help them maximize their contracts. So the primary focus of the GPO is around doing the contract itself, but we do a lot of other things, including the solutions and services aspect. And again, back to the discussion you had with Eric, HODUS, our inventory management system, is state-of-the-art, continues to be improved every year. So there's a lot of other parts that go with this along further than just a contract itself.
So what's the next big thing?
Gosh, it's a great question. We're going through a new program. We're calling it Next Gen GPO. That's kind of our thing for which stands for Next Generation GPO. So we're looking at a number of new things we're going to be rolling out in 2026. Further around segmentation of our membership, along with LPP and LPP Plus. We're going to look at further aggregation at the smaller end of our membership as well to help them maybe potentially have more buying power in the market. Rebate turnaround times, looking to accelerate that because that's the thing. You earn your rebate, you want to be paid. And as you know, groups use that for all different types of things, whether that's around physician compensation or to better the practice in different ways or buying real estate. So again, to get the money back to the practice that they've earned as quickly as possible. And there's a number of other things that we'll be working on next year as well. So it's an exciting time for Cencora.
That's fantastic. Shane, thank you so much.
John, another really useful interview with someone that we don't get to hear a lot from. What most impressed you about Shane?
Well, I tell you, just knowing Shane, I think just the whole base of knowledge that he has. I mean, this guy's probably forgotten more about drug distribution and drug utilization than any of us know because he's lived it and he's lived it for so long. And I'm so happy that Shane has found a place where his skills are truly valued and he can really make a difference. And I'll give him a lot of credit, although there are others that help with the meeting and help design the meeting. It was a great location. But Shane's really the driving force behind this meeting. And I think he does a fabulous job.
Yeah, he seemed to be the ringleader, and it showed. This guy has a 10,000-foot view of the entire industry. That's what I was most impressed with after speaking with him for a couple of hours. It seems like he understands each point in the constellation and what its role is with the other one. Maybe constellation's not the best metaphor, but nevertheless, like there's always, one thread gets pulled and something else moves somewhere, and he seems to understand all of those machinations. This year's meeting was in Dallas. Next year it's in Orlando, right? In November. We were in Dallas. We had some time to kill. And John, what does one do in Dallas when they have time to kill?
Well, Scott, one of the things I've always wanted to do when I'm in Dallas, probably better next time I'm in Fort Worth, because I don't think we realized that it was actually so far apart, but we went to the rodeo.
We did.
There is a famous rodeo that has been at the stockyards actually for, close to 100 years, over 100 years now. Yeah. And former stockyards where they used to sell cattle and whatnot, they may still sell some cattle there, but it's become a big tourist location and destination. And so we along with the crew of Retina, had a chance to go to the rodeo. And, my first rodeo, I thought it was pretty awesome, actually. I mean, if you think about it, we had great seats, and let me tell you, these cowboys certainly are amazing athletes and are incredibly skilled.
Yeah, so there were like several events. I called it like a horse skills competition. So the first one was you're on a horse, you have to lasso a calf that they've thrown out of a cattle chute, and then get it on the ground and hog tie it. And they time you, so whoever does it fastest, wins the round or something. I'm not even really sure of like what the metric is. They had one where you were a duo, right? So I would be the header, you were the healer, is what I think it was called. So I would have to get it around the head, then you'd have to throw a lasso under its feet, which looks nuts. The craziest one was bull riding, which you got to see it live to understand.
I mean, listen, you see bull riding on television and you see these guys get thrown off and it looks rough. But when you're there, man, the bulls are massive. And these guys
and angry.
Were just getting destroyed. I mean, there were only, I think, 3 people that made it through the full 8 seconds of riding the bull. But the ones who got thrown off, I mean, they would get up and about half of them looked like they were concussed. They would stagger away. They would be holding limbs. It's never made me so happy that I'm a amateur podcaster and a retina specialist and not a bull rider.
The rodeo clowns too were great. So I knew that this was a role, but to actually see it live is something different. To see them try to distract a bull such that it will get away from whoever it's closest to and then eventually just send it back home. It's absolutely wild. I will say the cutest part is I forget what it was called, maybe a mutton race, where they would put a group of children in the track and then they would release a couple of sheep with ribbons and the children would chase the sheep until they got the ribbon off its neck. It was adorable.
It was so cute. It's a real family environment. I mean, you could tell that this is something, and I think it goes on most nights. It's almost like a Cirque du Soleil. It's a incredibly well-produced show. And man, like I said, if I wasn't a retina specialist and I lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I'd probably be an orthopedic surgeon and set up my office right across from the stockyards because these poor bull riders were just getting destroyed.
Yeah, next time we go, we need cowboy hats. We had our Retina baseball hats. We needed cowboy hats. We looked like complete out-of-towners.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, that's our episode. Thank you for listening. If you'd like what you heard, which we assume that you did, please subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you use. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. We'll let you know when we have a new episode. You would do that by going to retinup.com, retinup.com. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. We might read it. And if you want to hear what John has to say about anything related to your practice, to your career, to a potential pivot you might have, to just news that's happening in ophthalmology or in medicine, email us a voice recording. We'll use it on our mailbag episode. You can email that voice recording to info@retinup.com.